When you're a kid, you don't remember a lot of details about things. Your memory's just like little spots here and there. But I do remember a number of things about one of the cars Dad had, a 1954 Buick. And one of the little bits of memory I have is my mother remarking how wonderful it was that on one man's salary back in 1957, they could buy a 3-year-old car. Of course, back then, the idea of cars lasting a long time was kind of unheard of. If you got 100,000 miles out of your car, that was like unbelievable. That I remember too. But that was a significant car because that's the car we drove from Swanton, Ohio to Camden, New York, which according to Google takes 7.5 hours. But in 1957, we didn't have divided highways, turnpikes, interstates, all that kind of stuff. So it took longer, but I do remember arriving before dark. Not much before dark, but we did. And we did this by having, driving all day long, and Dad built a bed in the back. The interior of a 54 Buick is big. So he built a platform in the back seat and then put a mattress over it, so we 3 kids had like a play deck and soft place to take a nap if we needed to. So that's how we started with the 54 Buick. And on the way back, Google says it takes about 8.5 hours to travel in the Canadian line. If you look on the little map that pops up here, there's a blue line that says, how to return through the Canadian side. And we did that, crossed over in Buffalo. And I got to see, as a 11-year-old, the Niagara Falls from the Canadian side. But that wasn't the only adventures we had with that car. Dad drove that car to work and back. There was a time he had a pickup truck, but all I remember is the car. And on one occasion, when he came home from work, he had a big dent in the hood of the car. This dent was about, yay so big, and it had a bit of hair in it. And of course, the big question is what happened? Well, on the way to work, going west to Wauseon, Dad encountered a herd of steers that had gotten out of their pen. And they were coming down the road at him, and the farmer in pursuit with a tractor. And as they got closer and closer, they began to come over to the side of the road, and they're in their enthusiasm to run down the road. One got right in front of the car, reared up on his hind legs, and the steer behind him pushed him, and wham, over he went on Dad's hood. Well, the farmer did replace the dent. He replaced the whole hood, actually. And that farmer was Old Man Hoffman, and his son was one of my classmates. And as it turned out, his son became the valedictorian of our class. And what is remarkable is that the son lost his dad when he was a junior in high school. The son took over the family farm, took over the family finances, and still managed to be the valedictorian of a class. One very remarkable young man. One of the things that happens when you grow up in the country and you're raised by country people is that sometimes what's offered on the dining room table didn't come from the store. Sometimes it's something that was hunted down in the fields, a pheasant or quail. And my dad loved to offer these things for the evening supper once in a while during the appropriate season. But one day, Dad came home with something and he was all excited. We were going to have a new dish for supper. And he opened up the trunk of his big 54 Buick, and guess what? A big old snapping turtle was right there to grab his wrist, which he almost did. It seems that Dad saw this thing crossing the road on his way home, got around behind it and threw it in the trunk and thought, we'll just have this for supper. What he didn't plan on was that one, the turtle was extremely angry when he opened up the trunk, and it had turned around, and now we had the problem of how do you get an angry snapping turtle out of the trunk? Well, the way we actually did it was we put a broomstick in front of the turtle, it snapped onto it, and Dad picked it up and carried it off to the barn where he was going to butcher it. Get it ready for supper. Well, he botched getting the head off, and the turtle wouldn't pull his head out after that. So Dad had to grab it with channel locks and pull it out while young son, me, stood on top of the turtle, and then he got the head off. Then he, put his tools away and turned around, and the turtle's halfway down the driveway. They don't have a centralized nervous system. So we had to run and catch the turtle, took it in the house and turned it upside down, and the feet were going like this, and scratched his wrist several times. So then he had to get the feet off before he could even butcher the chicken. It took a hacksaw to get the shell off. And it took like an hour and a half to get this ready for supper. And then Mother's idea of how to cook it was a pressure cooker. So she got it into the pressure cooker, brought the thing up to I don't know how many pounds of pressure, cooked it for a half hour, 40 minutes, and we put it on the table. And while we're saying grace, my brother and I are looking at each other thinking, this is unreal, this is ridiculous. Because as we opened our eyes, a little piece of meat went blip, beep, 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 down the side of the pile of meat. And we thought, oh my God, it's not even dead yet. Dad finished the prayer, and I told Dad, I says, a piece of meat fell off. Ah, that's your imagination. And right in front of Dad, beep, 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 another one went off. And Dad said, well, that's all right, we'll eat it anyway. And we did. In 1958, the FCC opened up licensing for that new 27 megahertz Citizens Band radio. And in 1958, Dad started construction on a new house. Mom had inherited a little bit of money. They bought a piece of property in the country. And Dad got a construction loan. And it occurred to him, at my uncle's urging, that it would be really handy during construction if he could radio back to the house and we could order things on the phone to be brought out to the construction site. So my uncle came up with a couple of used Heathkit CB1 radios, the old regenerative receivers, and they had crystals for the channels, and brought them over to my dad's house to install it in the house. Among many curious things is we ran the cable under the porch and up through the floor, and while Dad is downstairs pushing cable up through the floor, he doesn't know exactly where it is, and he starts calling for Mom. And Mom's name was Jeannie. He never liked her actual first name, Bertha. So he's called Jeannie. And behind him a cat goes meow, and he calls Jeannie again, and behind him a cat calls meow. And my sister had named the cat Jeannie, and he's standing there looking at the cat and thinking, this can't be, the cat can't know his name. So he calls out for Mom to pull the cable one more time. Jeannie, the cat climbs right up on his sleeve and goes meow. He goes, my God, the cat knows its name. So after we got the CB radio installed and my uncle tuned it by, we didn't have SWR meters then. He tuned it by putting an ammeter on the cable with some wires wrapped around the coax cable and moved some elements in and out until they got maximum current. That's all they knew about it. But Dad also installed a mobile unit in his 1954 Buick. And he didn't have a 3-inch drill to mount the ball and the spring. So he used tin snips to cut a 3-inch hole in the side of his wonderful Buick and installed the radio on the hump where the transmission is. And we used to talk back and forth. When Dad was on his way home from work, he'd stop at the construction site, he would call us, and if the builder said he needed something, my mother would take the notes down and call on the telephone before the place closed, the lumber yard or the concrete place. And she would order things so the builder could pick it up in the morning. And that was how we did construction. Eventually Dad upgraded to a super heterodyne Cobra, but eventually got off of CB radio because he says they were getting crazy. And that all happened before 1960, before it got really crazy. But that was the adventure of, our '54 Buick. We had a lot of fun with that car. Damn. I either got to get new glasses or write my notes bigger.